They called us monsters long before we proved them right. When the Galactic Council first encountered humanity, they classified our homeworld as a Class X2 death planet, a designation reserved for worlds so hostile that no rational species would evolve there naturally. Our gravity was crushing, our weather apocalyptic, our wildlife predatory beyond measure. We were anomalies, impossibilities that shouldn't exist. The Council xenobiologists studied us like specimens in a lab, marveling at how creatures from such a nightmare world could develop art, music, and philosophy alongside an inexplicable capacity for violence that made even their most hardened warriors tremble. They watched us wage wars that would extinct lesser species, then rebuild stronger than before. They observed us dive into burning buildings to save strangers, charge into overwhelming odds for abstract concepts like honor and duty, and somehow transform our planet's deadliest predators into companions. For 3 centuries, they kept us contained within our solar system, too terrified to let us loose among the stars, yet too fascinated to destroy us. They built a blockade of their finest ships and told themselves it was for everyone's protection, including ours. They were wrong about the protection part. Because when you corner Earth's apex predators and threaten everything they've sworn to protect, you don't get surrender or negotiation. You get something far worse. You get humans with nothing left to lose. And the galaxy's about to learn why our ancestors once looked up at the stars and saw, not beauty, but battlefields waiting to be won. Admiral Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal of the observation deck's viewport, watching the alien blockade ships drift like mechanical vultures around Earth's orbital space. 300 years of imprisonment, and still they maintained their vigil. The Galactic Council's finest vessels formed an iron ring around humanity's birthworld, their exotic energy shields shimmering like aurora in the void. Still thinking about breaking through, Admiral? Captain Marcus Rodriguez stepped beside her, his weathered face reflecting the distant glow of alien hulls. Every damn day, Marcus. Chen's voice carried the weight of command and the frustration of a caged predator. Command estimates we could take maybe 30% of their ships before they overwhelmed us, not enough to secure a corridor. Rodriguez nodded grimly. The math had been calculated and recalculated by Earth's finest military minds for decades. Humanity possessed advanced technology, born from 3 centuries of enforced isolation and desperate innovation. Their ships were faster, their weapons more destructive, their crews more determined than anything the galaxy had ever produced. But numbers were numbers, and the Council maintained over 800 vessels in the blockade at any given time. The councillors are requesting another audience, Rodriguez reported, pulling up a holographic display. The alien ambassadors' faces flickered to life, elongated features of the Valenti, crystalline structures of the Kyrex, and the unsettling shifting forms of the metamorphic coalition. Chen studied their expressions, reading the subtle tells she'd learned over decades of forced diplomacy. Fear masked as authority, curiosity struggling against revulsion. The Galactic Council had ruled 1,000 worlds for 10 millennia, but humanity remained their greatest mystery and deepest terror. Let me guess, Chen said. Another offer of generous integration into their society? With new conditions, Rodriguez confirmed. Mandatory genetic modification to reduce our aggressive tendencies. Relocation of 90% of our population to supervised colonies. And permanent monitoring of all human activities. Chen laughed, but there was no humor in it. They still don't understand. After 3 centuries, they think we're just another species to be managed and controlled. The truth was more complex and infinitely more dangerous. Humanity had spent their imprisonment well. While the Council watched their borders, human scientists had delved deep into theoretical physics, unlocking secrets that would have taken other species millennia to discover. Their engineers had created weapons that defied conventional understanding. Their military strategists had developed tactics that would revolutionize warfare across the galaxy. Most importantly, their explorers had found ways to slip past the blockade. Not many, not often, but enough to seed human presence on distant worlds, to gather intelligence on Council territories, and to prepare for the day when Earth's children would claim their birthright among the stars. That day was coming sooner than the Council realized. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden within the hollowed-out remains of Ceres, Admiral Zhang Wei reviewed the latest intelligence reports from humanity's covert operations. The Council's confidence in their containment had made them careless. Human infiltration teams had mapped their supply lines, identified the command structures, and most crucially, discovered the location of their strategic reserves. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Sarah Kim approached with a secured datapad, We've received confirmation from Ghost Squad 7. They've successfully established the beacon on Proxima Station. Zhang's expression remained neutral, but satisfaction gleamed in her eyes. Proxima Station was the Council's primary logistics hub for the entire blockade operation. More than that, it housed the families and support personnel for the alien fleet, civilians who had no idea their loved ones were part of an operation that had imprisoned an entire species for 3 centuries. Excellent work. Begin Phase 2 immediately. Phase 2 was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. Humanity had discovered that the Council's greatest weakness was also their greatest strength, their interconnected, centralized communication network. Every ship, every station, every world was linked through quantum entanglement transmitters that allowed instantaneous communication across galactic distances. It also meant that a sufficiently powerful virus, introduced at key nodes, could propagate throughout their entire civilization in moments. Elena Vasquez had spent 15 years developing what she called the Liberation Protocol, a quantum virus that wouldn't destroy Council systems, but would give humanity complete access to them. Every communication, every tactical plan, every secret the Council possessed would become available to human intelligence. More importantly, it would allow Earth's forces to coordinate their attacks with unprecedented precision. The Councilors don't realize it yet, Zhang murmured to herself as she watched her technicians prepare the final transmission sequence. But they've already lost this war. Aboard the flagship Harmony's Pride, Council Supreme Commander Yeltrak of the Valenti studied the latest reports from Earth with growing unease. The humans had been unusually quiet recently. No protests, no escape attempts, no demands for expanding their territory. Their diplomatic responses had become almost cordial. It worried him more than their previous hostility. Commander! His aide, a young Kyrex named Shilek, approached with crystalline features flickering in distress. We're detecting unusual quantum fluctuations from the human homeworld. Our analysts believe they may be attempting some form of long-range communication. Yeltrak's elongated fingers traced patterns in the air, a nervous habit his species had developed over millennia. Double the sensor sweeps. If the humans are planning something, I want to know about it before they act. But even as he gave the order, Yeltrak knew they were missing something crucial. Humanity had always been unpredictable. But their current behavior suggested a level of planning and patience that his species found alien. The Valenti were long-lived and methodical, but humans operated on timescales that seemed to compress strategy and execution into impossibly brief periods. Sir, another aide interrupted. We're receiving a formal communication request from Earth's government. They're requesting a full council assembly to discuss what they're calling new terms for human integration into galactic society. Yeltrak paused. In 3 centuries, humanity had never once initiated formal diplomatic contact. They had responded to council overtures, usually with barely concealed hostility, but had never requested their own negotiations. Schedule the assembly, he decided, but double our security protocols. I want every ship in the blockade on high alert. As the Harmony's Pride transmitted the acceptance, none of its crew noticed the microscopic quantum signature that piggybacked on their communication. A signature that would soon bloom into humanity's Declaration of Independence. On Earth, Admiral Chen received confirmation of the Council's acceptance with grim satisfaction. The final pieces of humanity's plan were falling into place. In 72 hours, every human colony ship hidden throughout the solar system would launch simultaneously. Every covert operative embedded in Council territory would activate their sleeper protocols. Every weapon humanity had spent 3 centuries developing would be brought to bear against their captors. Marcus, she called to her second-in-command. Send word to all department heads. Operation Breakout begins in 72 hours. Rodriguez nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. After 3 centuries of imprisonment, humanity was about to remind the galaxy why Earth had produced the most successful predators in known space. And Marcus? Chen added, her voice carrying a tone that would have made any council diplomat flee in terror. Make sure our diplomatic team understands. This isn't a negotiation. It's a declaration of war. The Council had made a fundamental error in their understanding of human nature. They had assumed that 3 centuries of containment would domesticate humanity, would make them grateful for any scraps of freedom offered by their betters. They had forgotten the most important lesson about Earth's dominant species. Humans weren't just survivors. They were conquerors, who had spent their entire evolutionary history turning disadvantages into weapons, transforming defeats into victories, and proving that the most dangerous thing in any ecosystem was a human with something to prove. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson the hard way. In the deepest bunkers beneath the Himalayas, General Patricia Okafor reviewed the final battle plans with her staff. Operation Breakout wasn't just about escaping Earth's gravity well, it was about establishing humanity as a galactic power that could never again be contained or controlled. Remember, she addressed her assembled officers, each one representing different aspects of humanity's military might. We're not fighting for victory, we're fighting for the right to exist as free beings in our own galaxy. The Council chose to make us prisoners. We're going to show them what happens when you cage Earth's apex predators. The war that was coming wouldn't be like anything the galaxy had seen in its 10,000-year history. It wouldn't be fought by civilized species following ancient protocols of engagement. It would be fought by humans, the universe's most successful Deathworlders, who had spent 3 centuries preparing for exactly this moment. And when it was over, the stars themselves would know humanity's name. The Council chamber aboard the massive diplomatic vessel Consensus had hosted negotiations between species for over 8 millennia, but never had its crystalline walls contain such tension.
Representatives from 47 different civilizations arranged themselves in the traditional spiral formation, with Supreme Commander Yeltrak at the center and the human delegation occupying the outer ring, a symbolic placement that usually indicated petitioner status.
Admiral Chen stood at the human platform, her dress uniform bearing no decorations save for a simple Earth insignia.
Behind her, 6 other humans maintained perfect military bearing despite being outnumbered by hundreds of alien dignitaries. To any observer, they appeared to be exactly what the Council expected, a desperate species finally ready to accept subjugation in exchange for freedom. They couldn't have been more wrong. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation matrix. Humanity comes before you today to discuss our future among the stars. Yeltrak's elongated features betrayed satisfaction. 3 centuries of containment had finally achieved their purpose. We welcome this change in human attitude, Admiral Chen. The Council has prepared generous terms for your species' integration into galactic civilization. As Yeltrak spoke, the Liberation Protocol virus was already spreading through the Council's quantum communication network. Every word, every tactical frequency, every classified database was being systematically compromised by the most sophisticated infiltration program ever created. Within the next 18 minutes, humanity would have complete access to the galaxy's most protected secrets. Chen smiled, an expression that made several nearby diplomats unconsciously step backward. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, Supreme Commander. We're not here to accept your terms. We're here to deliver our own. The chamber erupted in confused chittering crystalline harmonics of distress and the wet slapping sounds that passed for metamorphic coalition laughter. Yeltrak's features darkened to a deep purple, a sign of serious agitation among his species. Admiral, I think you failed to grasp your position, Yeltrak said, his voice carrying the authority of 10,000 years of galactic dominance. You represent a single world surrounded by our forces, dependent on our mercy for your very existence. What possible terms could you offer that would interest this assembly? Chen's smile widened. Complete and immediate withdrawal of all Council forces from human space, recognition of humanity's territorial claims to any system we choose to occupy, and formal acknowledgement that Earth is a sovereign world answerable to no galactic authority. The laughter that followed was exactly what humanity had expected and planned for. These beings saw humans as curiosities, dangerous pets that had finally learned to speak, but still didn't understand their place in the cosmic hierarchy. Alternatively, Chen continued as the laughter died down, you can continue your current policy of containment and face the consequences. Delegate Thrix of the Metamorphic Coalition bubbled with amusement. Consequences from a species trapped on a single world? Admiral, your entertainment value is exceeded only by your species' remarkable delusions of grandeur. That was when the lights went out. Throughout the Consensus, throughout the entire blockade fleet, throughout Council space itself, every system simultaneously experienced the same phenomenon. Not a malfunction, not an attack, but a demonstration. For exactly 60 seconds, humanity showed the galaxy what total control of their communications network meant. When the lights returned, Admiral Chen was no longer smiling. 60 seconds, she said quietly. In 60 seconds, we penetrated every system in your network, accessed every classified database, and identified the location of every Council military installation, supply depot, and command center within 1,000 light-years of Earth. We now know the names of your families, the locations of your children, and the security protocols for your most protected worlds. The chamber had fallen completely silent. Even the ambient sounds of life support systems seemed muted by the weight of her words. We didn't damage anything, Chen continued. We didn't need to. Because the message isn't about what we did, it's about what we can do whenever we choose. Your entire civilization now exists at our discretion. Yeltrak's voice carried a tremor that betrayed his species' legendary composure. That's impossible. Our quantum encryption was designed by beings who never had to fight for survival every day of their evolutionary history. Chen interrupted. Your security assumes rational behavior, predictable patterns, and respect for established protocols. You're dealing with humans. We don't follow your rules because we never agreed to them. As if summoned by her words, alerts began cascading through the Council's communication system. Reports flooded in from across their territory. Human vessels decloaking near critical installations, unknown ships broadcasting human identification codes, and most disturbing of all, evidence of established human colonies on worlds the Council had believed safely within their sphere of influence. How long? Yeltrak whispered. How long have we been seeding colonies beyond your blockade? About 250 years, Chen replied matter-of-factly. How long have we been mapping your territory? About 200 years. How long have we been infiltrating your communication networks? About a century and a half. How long have we been planning this exact conversation? 3 centuries. The magnitude of human deception was staggering. While the Council had congratulated themselves on containing Earth's aggressive species, humanity had been systematically preparing for the largest breakout in galactic history. They had turned their prison into a fortress, their isolation into an intelligence advantage, and their apparent helplessness into the perfect cover for the most comprehensive infiltration operation ever attempted. What do you want? The question came from Elder Zephyr of the Ancient Collective, being so old they remembered the galaxy before the Council's formation. What we've always wanted, Chen replied. Freedom. The right to explore, to colonize, to exist without asking permission from species who appointed themselves our guardians. We want our children to see stars that aren't filtered through your blockade sensors. We want to trade with civilizations that don't see us as curiosities or threats. We want to take our place as equals in this galaxy. And if we refuse? Yeltrak asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Chen's expression became absolutely neutral, the look of a predator calculating the most efficient way to eliminate its prey. Then we take what we want anyway, and you learn why Earth is classified as a death world. The threat wasn't subtle, but its implications were staggering. Humanity was offering the Council a choice between negotiated coexistence and total war. Given their demonstrated capabilities, it was a choice between dignity and destruction. You're bluffing, declared General Krex of the militant hegemony. You lack the numbers for sustained galactic warfare. Our combined fleets number in the hundreds of thousands. Led by commanders whose tactical databases we now control, Chen interrupted smoothly. Supplied by logistics networks we've already mapped and infiltrated. Defended by technologies we've been studying and countering for 3 centuries. General, you're thinking like a traditional military leader. We're not. She gestured to one of her companions who stepped forward with a portable holographic display. The projection showed a real-time tactical map of Council space, marked with hundreds of red indicators. Every red mark represents a human asset, Chen explained. Ships, agents, weapons platforms, or colonies. Notice anything interesting about their placement? The pattern was obvious and terrifying. Human assets surrounded every major Council world, controlled key hyperspace routes, and occupied positions that would allow them to cripple the galaxy's infrastructure within hours of conflict beginning. This is impossible, Delegate Thrix bubbled in distress. Our sensors would have detected such massive infiltration. Your sensors were designed to detect conventional threats, Chen replied. Large fleets, obvious military installations, traditional invasion patterns. You weren't looking for individual ships using asteroid camouflage, or colonies built inside captured comets, or weapons platforms disguised as space debris. You definitely weren't looking for agents who have been living in your societies for generations, learning your languages, understanding your cultures, and identifying your weaknesses. The full scope of human preparation was becoming clear, and it was more comprehensive than any Council member had imagined possible. Humanity hadn't just been planning an escape, they had been preparing for a war that would reshape galactic civilization. However, Chen continued, her tone becoming marginally more diplomatic, we prefer cooperation to conquest. We're offering you a partnership between equals rather than demanding your submission. We could have simply destroyed your blockade and taken what we wanted. Instead, we're here talking. The choice was brutal in its simplicity. Accept humanity as equals,
or face a war against opponents who had spent 3 centuries preparing for exactly this conflict while studying every weakness in council defenses. Yeltrak looked around the chamber, reading the expressions of his fellow councillors. Fear dominated every face, but underneath it, he could see something else: the grudging respect that predators showed for worthy opponents. "What guarantee do we have," he asked slowly, "that humanity will honor any agreement we reach?" Chen's smile returned, but this time it held genuine warmth instead of predatory calculation. "The same guarantee you've always had with any species, Commander. Our word, backed by our actions, proven over time. The difference is that now you're dealing with us as equals instead of prisoners. And if we agree to these terms, you'll withdraw your assets from Council space?" "We'll withdraw our military assets," Chen corrected. "Our colonies stay, our trade routes remain open, and our citizens retain the right to travel freely throughout the galaxy. But we have no interest in conquering your worlds or destroying your civilizations. We just want the right to exist alongside you." The negotiations continued for 18 hours, but the outcome had been determined in the first 18 minutes. Humanity had demonstrated capabilities that made continued containment impossible and offered terms that made cooperation preferable to conflict. When the final agreements were signed, Admiral Chen stood before the assembled council one last time. "3 centuries ago, you decided to cage us because you feared what we might become," she said. "Today, you've learned what we became while you weren't watching. We hope you're satisfied with the result." As the human delegation prepared to leave, Yeltrak approached Admiral Chen with a question that had been troubling him throughout the negotiations. "Admiral, if you had these capabilities for so long, why wait until now to use them?"
Chen considered her answer carefully. "Because we wanted to be sure we were ready for whatever came next."
"Freedom isn't just about escaping a cage, Commander. It's about being strong enough to stay free once you're out." The galaxy was about to discover exactly how strong humanity had become. 6 months after the Council Accords, Captain Sarah Martinez guided her exploration vessel Pathfinder through the Kepler Nebula, humanity's first officially sanctioned deep space mission in 3 centuries. The irony wasn't lost on her crew. They were exploring territory that human scouts had been secretly mapping for over a century, now with the Council's grudging blessing. "Captain!" Lieutenant Chen called from the sensor station. "We're receiving a distress signal from the edge of the nebula. It's not using any known Council protocols." Martinez frowned. The Kepler Nebula was supposedly uninhabited, a region of space considered too dangerous for colonization, due to its unpredictable gravitational fields and frequent stellar phenomena. "Can you clean up the signal?" "Working on it now. Got it." "Captain, you need to hear this." The bridge speakers crackled to life with a transmission that chilled every human present. The voice was clearly alien, but the universal translator made the terror unmistakable. "Anyone receiving this transmission, the Devourers have returned. Colonies Delta 7 through Delta 12 are gone. They're coming for the core worlds. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help." Martinez felt ice form in her stomach. The Devourers were a legend among spacefaring species, an ancient plague that had swept across the galaxy before the Council's formation, consuming entire star systems before vanishing into the cosmic void. Most species dismissed them as myth, cautionary tales told to frighten children. Humans, however, had accessed Council historical archives during their infiltration operations. They knew the Devourers were real, and they knew the last confirmed sighting had been over 8,000 years ago in the Galactic Rim territories. "Lieutenant, get me a quantum burst transmission to Earth Command. Maximum priority," Martinez ordered. "Navigation. Set course for the signal's origin." Engineering. Prepare for combat operations. As the Pathfinder adjusted course, Martinez reflected on the bitter irony of the situation. Humanity had spent 3 centuries preparing to fight the Council, only to find themselves facing the same ancient enemy that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization before humans had even developed agriculture. Within hours, the Pathfinder reached the source of the distress signal, a heavily damaged research station belonging to the Zilani Republic, one of the smaller Council member states. The station's hull showed evidence of weapons fire unlike anything in current galactic arsenals. Scorched metal that seemed to have been consumed rather than simply destroyed. "Captain," Ensign Torres reported from communications, "I'm detecting life signs aboard the station. Approximately 30 survivors in the central core." Martinez made her decision quickly. "Prepare a boarding party. Heavy weapons and environmental suits. If the Devourers are responsible for this, we need to know what we're dealing with." The boarding operation revealed horrors that even human military forces found disturbing. The Zilani research team had been investigating ancient ruins when their excavation triggered some kind of beacon. Within hours, ships of impossible design had emerged from hyperspace and begun systematically consuming everything in the system. Planets, moons, asteroids, even the star's outer atmosphere. Dr. Valen, the expedition's lead xenoarchaeologist, provided the critical intelligence through chattering mandibles that betrayed his species' extreme distress.
They're not just destroying civilizations, they're harvesting them. Every living being, every piece of technology, every scrap of knowledge. They consume it all and move on to the next system. Martinez studied the sensor data the survivors had managed to preserve. The Devourer ships defied conventional understanding. Organic-looking vessels that seemed to grow and adapt in real time, incorporating destroyed enemy technology into their own designs. More disturbing, they appeared to be learning from each encounter, becoming more efficient at overcoming their victims' defenses. "Doctor, how many ships did you observe?" Martinez asked. The initial attack force comprised 12 vessels, each approximately the size of a council battlecruiser. But Captain, Dr. Verlaine's species-specific equivalent of a gulp was audible through the translator. Long-range sensors detected a much larger force approximately 6 light-years out. Hundreds of ships, possibly thousands. Martinez felt her blood turn to ice. If the Devourers had returned in the numbers Dr. Valen described, the galaxy was facing an extinction-level threat. Even worse, the Council's military forces were still reeling from their discovery of humanity's true capabilities and were nowhere near prepared for a war of survival. The quantum burst response from Earth Command arrived within hours, bearing orders that surprised no one who understood human psychology. Render all possible assistance to survivors. Gather maximum intelligence on Devourer capabilities. Prepare for immediate combat deployment. Humanity does not abandon civilizations to extinction. Admiral Chen's message was more personal. Sarah, this is what we trained for. Not war against the Council, but the defense of civilization itself. Show them what Earth's children can do when everything worth protecting is at stake.
Over the following days, the Pathfinder coordinated a massive evacuation operation as Devourer scout forces systematically consumed the outer systems of the Zalani Republic.
Human ships that had been hidden throughout Council space for centuries suddenly revealed themselves, not as threats to galactic peace, but as the first line of defense against annihilation.
Captain Rodriguez aboard the stealth destroyer Ghost Wind provided the first tactical assessment of Devourer capabilities during a brief engagement near the Zalani homeworld. "These things adapt faster than anything we've ever seen," he reported after his ship barely escaped a pursuit by 2 Devourer vessels. "They started the engagement vulnerable to our plasma cannons. By the time we disengaged, they'd developed effective countermeasures." The news got worse as more reports came in. Devourer forces weren't just adapting to individual weapons. They were sharing adaptations across their entire fleet through some kind of quantum communication network. Every human victory made the next battle harder as the enemy incorporated new defenses. Earth's military leadership faced an unprecedented challenge. Humanity had spent 3 centuries preparing to fight Council forces using conventional tactics and known technologies. The Devourers represented something entirely different, a collective intelligence that learned from every encounter and became stronger with each victory. General Patricia Okafor, now Supreme Commander of Human Forces, addressed this reality in her first War Council meeting. "We can't fight them the way we plan to fight the Council. Traditional tactics, even our advanced ones, will only work once. We need to be more unpredictable than they are adaptive." The solution came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez, architect of the Liberation Protocol virus, proposed a strategy that epitomized human tactical thinking. We don't try to outsmart their adaptation protocols. We make adaptation itself a weakness. The Chaos Protocol was vintage human engineering, a weapon system that randomly changed its operational parameters with each shot. Instead of consistent energy frequencies or projectile characteristics, it generated completely randomized attacks that even its own operators couldn't predict. The Devourers could adapt to patterns, but they couldn't adapt to true randomness. More importantly, the protocol was designed to be distributed across the entire human fleet through their quantum communication network, the same network that had given them access to Council systems. Every human ship would have access to every successful random configuration, but in a format too chaotic for the Devourers to analyze or counter. The first major engagement occurred at the Nexus Prime system, a critical hyperspace junction that connected 12 different star systems. Losing it would give the Devourers access to the galaxy's core worlds within weeks. Admiral Zhang Wei commanded a mixed fleet of human vessels and Council ships whose commanders had overcome their fear of humanity long enough to recognize the existential threat they all faced. "Remember," Zhang addressed the combined fleet. "We're not trying to destroy them all at once. We're trying to prove that they can be fought, that adaptation has limits, and that organic chaos can overcome mechanical evolution." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. Human ships using Chaos Protocol weapons engaged Devourer forces in seemingly random attack patterns, while Council vessels provided supporting fire and electronic warfare capabilities. The key to success wasn't superior firepower or advanced technology. It was the uniquely human ability to embrace controlled chaos as a tactical advantage. Captain Martinez, now commanding the heavy cruiser Earth's Fury, led the decisive assault on the Devourer command vessel. Her approach epitomized human tactical doctrine. Instead of trying to outmaneuver or outgun the enemy, she deliberately crashed her ship into the Devourer vessel's hull and led a boarding party into its organic interior. What they found inside defied description: a writhing mass of consumed technologies and absorbed life forms, all connected to a central intelligence that had been growing and learning for millennia. But it was also vulnerable in a way the Devourers hadn't anticipated. "It's afraid," Martinez reported as her team fought through the ship's internal defenses. "This thing has consumed thousands of civilizations, but it's never encountered anything like us. Everything it knows about warfare comes from species that followed logical patterns. We're too chaotic for it to process." The destruction of the command vessel triggered a cascade failure throughout the Devourer fleet. Without their central coordination, individual ships became vulnerable to conventional tactics. More importantly, humanity had proven that the ancient threat could be defeated by beings who refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. The victory at Nexus Prime marked a turning point in galactic history. For the first time in 8,000 years, the Devourers had been not just stopped, but actively driven back. Species throughout Council space rallied to the cause, contributing ships, resources, and knowledge to the growing resistance movement. But it was humanity that provided the strategic leadership and tactical innovation that made victory possible. The same species that the Council had imprisoned for being too dangerous to trust had become the galaxy's salvation against a threat that made human aggression seem benevolent by comparison. In the aftermath of the battle, Supreme Commander Yeltrak approached Admiral Chen with something that hadn't existed in their previous interactions: genuine respect. "Admiral, I owe you and your species an apology," he said, his elongated features showing the Valenti equivalent of humility. "We thought we were protecting the galaxy from humanity. We never realized we were preventing you from protecting us." Chen accepted the apology graciously, but her response carried the weight of 3 centuries of enforced isolation.
Commander, we never wanted to be your enemies.
"We just wanted to be your equals. Sometimes it takes a common threat to remind everyone what really matters." The war against the Devourers continued for another 18 months, with human-led coalitions systematically driving the ancient threat back toward the galactic rim. Each victory demonstrated new aspects of human tactical innovation: the ability to learn from defeat, to turn disadvantages into strengths, and to find victory in situations that other species would consider hopeless. When the last Devourer ship was finally destroyed, humanity found itself in a position they had never sought but had undeniably earned. They were no longer the dangerous species to be contained, the curiosity to be studied, or the anomaly to be explained. They were the guardians who had saved galactic civilization from extinction. The new Galactic Charter, signed aboard a human vessel in the liberated Nexus Prime system, established principles that would have been unthinkable before the Devourer War. Species were recognized as equals regardless of their origins or characteristics. Freedom of movement and colonization became fundamental rights. Most importantly, the galaxy acknowledged that diversity, even dangerous diversity, was essential for survival against future unknown threats. Admiral Chen, now serving as the first Director of Galactic Defense, stood on the bridge of the starship Liberation as it departed Earth for humanity's new capital world in the Centauri system. The blockade was gone, replaced by the bustling traffic of a dozen species eager to trade with and learn from, the beings who had proved themselves as defenders rather than destroyers. "Ma'am," Captain Torres reported from the navigation station, "we're receiving transmission requests from over 200 different worlds. Everyone wants to establish diplomatic relations with humanity." Chen smiled as she watched Earth recede into the distance, not with sadness, but with pride. Humanity was finally taking its place among the stars, not as conquerors or prisoners, but as protectors of everything worth defending in the galaxy. "Open channels to all of them," she ordered. "It's time for the galaxy to meet its new neighbors." The stars no longer looked like battlefields to human eyes. They looked like home.